Aloha mai kākou. Happy Aloha Friday. Welcome to Huewai Ola. My name is Kalei Chang. It's my pleasure to be your host. Huewai Ola is a webinar series brought to you by Ahakane and Kanai ʻohana, a great opportunity for us to strengthen our ʻohana by uplifting and empowering our kane, our Hawaiian men. Huewai Ola means a gourd of living water, referring to a man as a vessel of life guided by the god Kane. In Hawaiian culture, gourds also represent knowledge. In this series, we'll be introducing you to some extraordinary people in our community, practitioners, scholars, leaders. They'll all share perspectives, practices, and advocacy in our lahui. We like to say aloha nui to our viewers out there. Mahalo for joining us today. As we get started, please shoot us a quick aloha in our Zoom chat box or Facebook comments. Let us know where you're joining us from. We'd love to hear from you. Also, leave comments or ask questions throughout the show, and we'll do our best to include you in our conversation. Also, today is a very special day for our lahui. We like to say, hauʻoli la hoʻi hoʻi ea. Today, July 31st, 2020, is the 177th anniversary of a lesser-known but very significant piece of our Hawaiian history. Big aloha to Imai Kalani Winchester and my dear friend Noelani Goodyear Kaupua for being the vanguards and sounding boards for this important day. My challenge for you viewers out there, we invite you to go to La Hoi Hoi Ea's Facebook or their website, or there's a lot of information online today. Find out more about why this day is so special to our Hawaiian community. It's an extraordinary story and would actually make a great short film. I hope some kanaka are already working on that. We'll see. All right. Well, without further ado, welcome to episode 13 of Huewai Ola, ʻEkolu Mea Nui. Let's take a second to meet our guests today. First, she is a kupa of Punalu'u, Oahu, working on her MS in nutritional science from UH Manoa. Having a background in public health, she has a passion for Native Hawaiians to once again thrive in all areas of life. She hopes to improve the well-being of our communities by encouraging our ʻohana to eat traditional foods on a regular basis. She's had many brilliant mentors over the years, and as a fellow of Ahakane, she's worked as a kako'o under Ho'oponopono practitioners Lynette Paglinawan and Earl Kava'a. She's an advocate for Native Hawaiian rights and currently serves on a board as VP for kaiāulu Cooperative, representing ulu farms in Punalu'u. We'd like to welcome Kalei kia aloha. Aloha mai. Thank you for joining us. Secondly, and she's a dear friend, this wahine mana has dedicated her entire professional life to improving the well-being of our Hawaiian community. For the last 20 years, she has serviced our people through both the Lili'uokalani Trust as well as Kamehameha Schools as a clinician and an executive leader. She has developed close relationships across the Pacific, working on research projects, writing articles, and presenting at conferences on topics impacting the livelihood of Native Hawaiians as well as other indigenous peoples. Due to unforeseen circumstances, the focus of her life's work has shifted to justice reform in Hawaii and the creation of ʻEkolu Mea Nui, a nonprofit organization committed to the transformation of Hawaii's criminal legal system. Ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome Dr. Jamee Mahealani Miller. Aloha mai.
Okay. Aloha, aloha kako. Mahalo for that beautiful introduction. And for having us here, Ovo, Jamee Mahealani Miller, Punalu'u Maiau, o Ki'ia Ku'u Kaikamahine, Kalei One'ia Miller, ke aloha. And we are here in Punalu'u, beautiful day. So thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for taking some time. Yes, yes, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, so I was just born and raised here from a humble family. You know, my parents were just really, really hard workers. I have one sister, and just real fortunate to have parents who embraced all of our similarities and differences and taught us how to care for one another and ʻohana and our land and our community. And that runs deep in our veins and our blood. So it's a fitting time today, to converse and discuss about equity, about freedom, about kanaka, and a really unjust system that we live in here in our own lands called our criminal justice system. I don't call it that anymore. It's a criminal legal system just because it's not justice. So that's a little bit about me. My daughter, Kalei.
Aloha mai, my name is Kalei Aloha. Yep, I'm from Punalu'u, but I live in Kahalu'u right now. And I'm excited to be with you folks. So mahalo for having us.
Thank you so much for being here. Now, as part of our flyer and our announcements, we were talking about the two words, hale paʻahao and hulihia. Can you talk a little bit about those two words that you included in our title of this episode?
Right. So paʻahao is referred to as the term that was given to inmates. And I think there should, I feel that we should change that term only because what it stands for, what the literal meaning is to be pa'a, behind iron. And in other places across the world, indigenous worldview, they don't use those types of terms when they refer to incarcerated individuals and previously incarcerated individuals. They refer to as warriors and actually speak that into the lives as our paʻahao are transitioning or are going through the system or the development and growth. And so they're really just intentionally giving them a better future through even just a term like warrior versus someone who's stuck behind bars. So hale paʻahao just really means jail or prison system or the system of incarceration right now. Hulihia refers to a deep and transformative change that looks very different from a current state. And so that is what we aspire for our system right now. I think this is a tremendous time with all the things happening in our environment, in our world, and really appropriate to talk about Hulihia and what that means for all systems that affect us here in Hawaii and across the world. And our interest is really to Hulihia or Huli the system, our criminal legal system.
Thank you so much for explaining that. So for this hour, I really just want to offer you a platform and a space to speak on the wonderful work you're doing. But before we even get into that, I want you to really take your time and please explain to us the origins of ʻEkolu Mea Nui.
Okay. Unfortunately, in 2009, we had a tragedy in our family. I have two children, my daughter Kalei sitting next to me. I'm married, I've been married for 31 or 32 years, I think. My husband's name is Kalei as well. Don't want to forget about him.
Aloha Kalei.
Son. We have a son, his name is ʻEkolu, and he's a year younger than his sister. And in 2009, he was 19 years old and made the worst mistake of his life. He drove drunk with his friends, and he got into an accident where a passenger in his vehicle died. And I wish that upon the family, whether you're in our shoes or the family that lost their loved one, or even just outside pieces of the ʻohana and the community, we went through a tremendous amount of pain. But also when there's pain, there is opportunity for healing to occur. And so for our ʻohana, we did everything that we felt that we could humanly do. It was more than possible. There was miracles occurring left and right during this time as we kept a close eye on our son because he was very vulnerable, 19 years old. He never had even a speeding ticket before this. He was, he was 19 and just regular kind of guy, first year in college. Um, and we did our very best with what we knew to support him through all of this. And the first thing that we knew and he felt because of how he was raised and who we are as a ʻohana was to take accountability for his actions. And at the time, we didn't realize that the criminal legal system was very, very what was not a place for us to find the healing that we all needed, all of us, everybody included. That, but that is where we looked. That's all we knew. We did have some, family sessions. I'm a clinician. I have lots of friends that do family therapy, and we have Aina out here. We did stuff outside. I know lots of cultural practitioners. We did everything possible to bring our family to a place where we could heal, where we could provide healing for others, where we could express our emotions and ask for forgiveness of our community for this. And for the most part, our community is so graceful out here and poured love upon my son and our family. And then the criminal system as it is took such a long time to even process any of this, that in between, I think people were, their emotions were up and down. There was lots of unanswered questions, not sure what's gonna happen. And so in the meantime, my son got charged for negligent homicide. And he was at the time working with my husband in a really safe place, trying to do, he was actually going around to different high schools. He had a project called Pono Project, and he was having high schoolers explaining his story and having high schoolers do contracts of how to behave, what is the Pono way to behave. And anyways, he was charged, and we went through the whole system and thought that this was just part of the journey, and it is. Anyway, he got sentenced, to our surprise, to 10 years, which was maximum, and the harshest sentence in the history of Hawaii for that type of crime, if you will. And we accepted it because, we're a pretty strong family, and we said, we'll prepare for this, even though we didn't know how. I mean, how do you prepare your child to go to prison? We didn't know anybody in prison. We knew some prison guards, but that's about it. We know nothing of the system at all. And so off he went in 2011 to Halawa, and a few days ago, it marked 9 years. He's still in prison, despite being, pretty much a model inmate is what we hear. We get, I get calls every now and then from those that are re-entering back into communities saying that you raised such a good, fine young man. He will, thanking us because his generous spirit is, of course, wherever he goes. And so we've learned a lot through all of this. We've learned so much about this system and how wrong it is. And in 2014, when OHA came out with the disproportionate rates of Native Hawaiians being criminalized, we looked at all the data points, and my son hit every single one of those data points. And so that's when we were aware, like, why are there so many Hawaiians that are incarcerated and that they're over sentenced? Their stay, even with minimums and all of that, they stay in prison or jails longer than anyone else, any other race. And the recidivism rate for Native Hawaiians is a little higher than others. And there's not much programs for our people. And there's definitely no support for families. We found absolutely no support. When he first went into Halawa, I always share this story that we were waiting for him to call us. to, you know, they collect call and we're waiting and waiting and I'm getting worried. I don't know what's happening. I would call the prison. They hang up on me, of course, because you're not supposed to call. And then I don't want to make waves because I don't want him to get affected by it there. And we found out he was trying to memorize people's numbers. We needed to have a phone that was that we subscribed to with Hawaiian Tel. That was the only way he could collect calls. He couldn't call us on our phone, which we had was connected to our cable. And so every time he tried to call, it wouldn't go through. And so he finally got through to someone that he remembered that had a cable, had a Hawaiian telephone number. And then they called me and told me, your son's trying to get a hold of you. He can't. You need a different phone subscriber. And nobody told us that. And so there's no support system or handbook for families. I will say in the last 5 years, there's been lots of support from different community groups for families and trying to really get around that and be advocates for families. So since then, what we've learned and what we've experienced, we've tried to make better, not just for our situation, but for everyone. We definitely know that the reason this has happened is not just for our learning and not just for my son's learning and growing, that it is for us to do something about because it's happening way too often than it should. Yeah, I don't know if you want to add on to that.
No, yep, I think that's about it. But from that, I think my mom was continuously getting tapped on the shoulder when it comes to the justice reform system. A lot of people were going to her for more information about what her son is experiencing and how are the things that she's going through. That she ended up becoming more and more involved. And it wasn't because she wanted to, it was because it just was happening. It was just unfolding that way. And from there, ʻEkolu Mea Nui kind of birthed. And so we've been given so many opportunities to be a part of this, and it's been knocking on our door, and it's just time for us to start doing something about it.
Mm-hmm. So ʻEkolu Mea Nui started about 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, and it was a time in our lives when when somebody goes to prison, and I'm just speaking from a Hawaiian perspective, a disconnection occurs not only with ʻohana, but with the land and the place and the practices. They're no longer available to any of our people for their well-being. And so even for us being outside of prison, having jobs, taking care of our family and spending time with each other, we still felt very imprisoned because we weren't whole and we weren't complete. And so there, a couple years ago, our holidays have been hard to celebrate, of course. Birthdays, phone calls when my son calls, visiting him, it's always hard to say goodbye, etc. And so a couple of years ago, my husband and I was turning 50, and we thought that instead of having a party, because we didn't want to have a party without our son being home, that perhaps we should do something for those that are transitioning out of the system, because that would be him and anytime soon. And so we ended up doing that, having a fundraiser, and we called it ʻEkolu Mea Nui, just because of him, and that was kind of his nickname growing up, because he was full of so much aloha and love and just a happy guy to be around all the time. And so we didn't know what else to call it, so we called it that. And then it was super successful. We wanted to just raise like $5,000 and give it to a organization, a nonprofit that were helping Native Hawaiians transition. And we ended up raising about $15,000, and we got to help 2 organizations. And then people kept asking us after that, oh, so what else are you gonna do? When is the next one? What are you gonna do? Are you gonna apply for grants? And I was like, whoa. Let's just wait a minute here. And but some of my friends and our ʻohana kept, saying, you really should do something. This is greater than just one fundraiser. And there needs to be, more, if you would, watchdogs, because our state and our government is not doing any justice to our people that are incarcerated. So that's kind of how it birthed. We have our 501c3 now. We have, strategy for the future. We really we don't want to be an adversary at all to the state of Hawaii. We want to support the state and in transforming and becoming more of a place of healing. And at one time, years ago, question was posed: can prison be a place of healing? Can it be a pu'uhonua? And there are aspects of it that, yes, there can be, but it's not until the entire system can huli that it will truly be a place of healing, not just for Native Hawaiians, but for everyone involved in the system, whether it's directly or indirectly, and more cost effective.
So through your journey, during these years, what about our legal system have you come across that's been just surprising or
Yeah, so the first thing is that the mass incarceration that occurs here in Hawaii and other states. And so we always hear that our prisons and our jails are overcrowded, which is why our legislature and some government officials want to spend $200+ million to build a new jail. And really, we have pieces in the legal system that can work so that we don't have the overcrowding, and communities will be safer. And so, but we just haven't implemented those. There are certain policies that, around prevention and how you and best practices that can be used so that people truly heal, so there's no recidivism. I think the worst thing that Hawaii ever did was to send inmates off our island to the continent, into the private industry, to be caged elsewhere. When we can do that, we know, we're confident. It's not only me, there's others that are confident that we could solve that problem. We here in Hawaii can solve that problem. And so that's the worst thing that we did. One, it cost our state so much money, taxpayers' money, to send inmates away. And then when they come back, so no money is generated here in Hawaii for that at all. All our money goes out to private corporations it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And people are getting rich off of that. Nothing comes back to Hawaii. So nothing, there's no return on investment for that. They don't even come back healed or reformed, because that all takes place here in Hawaii. Nothing happens away. It's just people are just being held there. And with what's happening now with COVID is a huge concern for not only myself, but others, other family members. For those, the 1,100 inmates that are in Arizona in the prison right now that just reported having an outbreak, I'm really concerned. My son is there. I'm super worried about him.
Was he in Arizona from the beginning of his term or more
Almost,
recently?
yeah.
And how did it affect your family?
We visited him. We tried to visit him about every 6 months or so, and try and work it around maybe other family vacation or whatever.
Right.
And so we've tried to visit him. We have not seen him in over a year. We were planning on going to see him over spring break time, but of course COVID happened, and we don't really want to be in Arizona right now. And so so we haven't even gotten opportunities to do video visits. So for the inmates and the families that are away, you're able to do a video visit similar to this with your loved one once a month, and that stopped, of course, because of COVID. And so we haven't been able
Oh,
to
wow.
do any of that since then. We talked to him on the phone. It's really expensive. Phone calls are very expensive. He does have email, but he gets charged per second for it. So if you don't have, and then, he does have work there on and off, but they get paid 25 cents an hour. And so,
I think that's important to talk about, though, that we're fortunate family to be able to keep communication with him.
Yeah.
But there's probably more people out there that can't have that, doesn't have the resources to keep up with the costs to maintain relationship with their loved ones that's away in prison.
Yeah, so he's been there pretty much from the beginning. He did have opportunities to come back. He chooses to stay in Arizona because he said it's a newer facility. It's safer, meaning gangs and stuff. He said Halava, there's just too much gangs. He's managed to not join a gang all these years, and he feels safer in Arizona, which is really sad because
It
it's
is sad.
not on our INA.
Hmm. I have a couple questions from viewers, and this might be sensitive questions, so up to you if you want to answer them. They're asking regarding his finishing his, or when he'll be released, or I know you have some interesting stories about parole requests. They're asking if he'll be paroled soon or released soon. Anything you'd
Yeah,
like to share
so
regarding that?
sure. I think he's seen the parole board about 10 times. And every single time he's gotten denied. And really have concrete reasons, just that they want him to improve behavior, show more remorse, and
Empathetic.
be empathetic. And, and I mean, improve behavior, he doesn't have bad behavior, right? So we don't really know what they mean. They want him to do drug treatment, which he's done 10 times. He has all the certificates or more. He sends all the certificates home to us. He's done numerous classes. He's gone above and beyond what they've asked of him. But each time he sees the parole board, for some reason they find that he's not good enough to be on parole. So he just had a hearing this week, in fact, and he got denied. But he will see the board again. They'll reconsider him in 3 months. And so his max date is July 20th next year. And so if he doesn't get, it's anywhere between 3 months from now and July 20th.
But sometimes people will max out because they're tired of dealing with the system. So some people, like my brother, he chose to max out. If he wasn't given parole, then he said that he'll just max out because it's just easier to do it that way than to deal with the system, because the system is not going to support him, even if he was paroled. We've proven over and over again that he has a good support system here. We provided them with, he has a job, he has a home. What else?
Different programs have
different
accepted
programs.
him.
And so even with that, they said that he's not ready to come out. So I know that a lot of people would rather just max out than go through that process, right? Yeah. And they want such rigorous requirements of them during parole. And so it's not always easy for somebody who doesn't have the resources to
be successful.
Right.
Yeah. So he, I think it was 2 years ago or a year ago, when he had 2 years left, he said he just wanted to max out because people kept coming back in with newer charges for frivolous stuff and adding time back onto them. And he was seeing it as scary. He doesn't want to spend more than 10 years. He did have a minimum of 4.5. And ever since then, he's just been, so since his minimum, and now when he sees the parole board, we don't know what it is. We really don't know what it is.
I think it's very interesting that he actually would rather stay in Arizona at this point. That's crazy.
Yeah. He's not the only one,
Have
Kalei. That's
yeah,
even more
have you
interesting.
through your journey, that would be my next question. Have you met other Hawaiian families in the same scenario, in the same situation as you, or similar situations?
Yes, we have, and so and I mean, it is very, very sad. It breaks my heart every time I meet someone, and I even someone that I've known for a long time and didn't know their story, and then they come to me and they say, this has happened to us too, and it's just it is so very heartbreaking to hear the same things happening over and over again, and a lot of it, like my daughter says, is around resources, and I mean we don't have a lot of resources, but we use what we have so that we can find great representation for our son, make sure that, he has money so that he can buy him food because the food there is not that great, etc. He can call us. He can go to the health place when he needs to. They have to pay for that. And so it's really, really sad that there are families that don't have those kinds of resources to do that. And I think that's what ʻEkolu Mea Nui really stands for is we'll be fine. My son will be fine. He will come out when he comes out, and he has amazing support. And I mean, there's going to be, ups and downs. We're not naive to that, of course, but he will be fine. He's still young. He just turned 30. All of his 20s were in prison. But relatively, that's still very young. And so he'll jump back on his feet. He'll be fine. I worry about him healing inside, having to live with what happened, in 2009 and someone dying and a family losing their loved one. So I worry about him having to deal with that. And he hasn't really, because he's been in prison all these years and they don't have the appropriate type of therapy and counseling for him. And so, and it's a lifelong, thing for people experiencing that. And so that's what, so it's really about others that are in different situations and don't have the support system that our son has. And so we really want ʻEkolu Mea Nui to be that support system for all these families that need it as they come out. We see what we have planned in our horizon as we support the state, that those very interesting pieces of transition. So when you first transition into the system, we want to be sure that there's an array of cultural practices and therapies for an individual so that they can divert themselves from really actually entering the system. We want to ensure that when they actually get into prison or are sentenced and are in prison, that there are those around them that can help with the healing, that ho'oponopono is a normal in prison. That is something that they can go to, that they can practice, that they can learn, that they can connect to their na'au and their kupuna and really heal and transform. We also want to ensure that ʻEkolu Mea Nui is a space for when they re-enter into society, that community is ready, that there's no fear that there will be way more crimes because our incarcerated folks are out. Like, that's just a fallacy. We as community have to take accountability for that. And so that's really what the organization is. Our son just shed light on it for us, and we're definitely still learning. There are organizations across the nation and in Hawaii that are further along in justice reform. We are like a total baby organization. Right now, just doing lots of advocacy for our cultural practices in prisons and in the system. And we recognize that the system itself has to accept that and acknowledge that there is a different way of doing things, and it could be so much more healing for everyone. Restorative justice is accepted in 36 states on the continent, and they have decreased recidivism in all of those states. And it is based on ho'oponopono. That's where you get restorative justice from, ho'oponopono. And yet here in Hawaii, we have no such legislation to it. It's practiced here and there, criminal system, but it's
Sorry,
not normal.
could you define for our viewers what recidivism is?
Recidivism is when you return to criminal activity after you've been released and you go back to prison. So for Hawaii, it's very high. It's between 56% and 70.
Wow.
I've seen different pieces. For those states that practice restorative justice, their recidivism rate is low, like 20s, 30s. I've seen 40s, and even lower. So Hawaii has an opportunity where we are definitely a punitive state, and we want to be a transformative state. A couple years ago, with all the work from different people across sectors, was able to provide recommendations for Department of Public Safety to adopt more transformative ways within the system that would save us money. Also, restorative justice, every dollar spent on restorative justice saves a state $8. And so I don't know why we're not doing more of that.
So in your work through ʻEkolu Mea Nui and collaborating with others that support your purpose, what has been in the conversation as far as incorporating Hawaiian culture into the restorative process? I know you mentioned ho'oponopono as a big part of that. Can you talk any further on that, the cultural side of things?
Yeah, so there's been many that have paved the way before ʻEkolu Mea Nui got involved many years ago. Folks would go to Arizona and they would do makahiki ceremony there, and they would have kumu within the prison system, and
Right.
different aspects of our culture as a means of cultural identity and self-identity and strengthening that. Most of it has been done, of course, in the men's prison, but also in women's prison. I've seen at women's prison here in Hawaii series of workshops, and they even have a halal there, and they have ho'oponopono options there as well. So there are programs. I don't want to say there aren't, but there definitely are programs. But it is not woven with the system. It is like elective. Right. It is one-offs. It is if you want to, etc. Right? And most want to. Most recently, I know Ahakane had supported ho'oponopono classes on Hawaii Island within the system at the prison. And there was an overwhelming amount of interest, numbers of interest from the inmates that wanted to learn and apply ho'oponopono in their life. So much so that they didn't know how to handle that. I know that they added more classes, but it really goes to show that the hunger and the yearning that for our cultural practices within this is there, and almost falling upon deaf ears if we're not listening really, really well, and we're not pushing, and we're not, there to say, hey, we have this. So I know Ahakane has done tremendous work around trying to build that workforce or that hui of practitioners to actually address this issue. And it's going to be makau when our government is ready for us to be a part of that. So there are, and then of course, re-entering back into community and society. There are Native Hawaiian programs, or there are programs that aren't Native Hawaiian, but they do provide Aina type activities and healing for those that are coming out. Yeah. So
but if we can do it before they go to prison, that's another goal for ʻEkolu Mea Nui too. Not everybody needs to go to prison, Maybe they need this program, maybe they need the help before they go to prison, and that's where the healing starts. Rather than they're in prison and then they're transitioning out and then let's provide the service for them. So that's another part that ʻEkolu Mea Nui has been trying to focus on, is that we know to prevent people from going to prison is to provide these services to them.
Diversions, similar to drug court. So I've seen it being written down, and I refer to it as culture court. And so there's been some interest in some judges and other practitioners for that to occur.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time for our Lahui movements and conflicts such as Mauna Kea, Hunananiho, Kahuku. It's really waking up our people to get involved, have a voice. A big part of that is encouraging our Hawaiians to vote. And in our conversations earlier, you brought up a good point that, yes, okay, everybody's voting. Of course, everybody's worried about OHA, worried about mayor, governor, those races. But people often overlook prosecutor. I saw you on a very interesting forum with ACLU last week, a couple of weeks ago, regarding the people who are running for prosecutor. Can you speak a little more on that and how important that is to your cause and how important that is to Hawaii in general that people might not realize?
So the prosecutor and the prosecutor's office holds tremendous power to either flood our jails and prisons or not. They have discretion how they interpret the law and how they want to prosecute those or not. And then they have great authority as to what my daughter was talking about around diversion programs. And so we've experienced just with my son that if there was a prosecutor in office at that time, or that prosecutor's office was more empathetic and understood that he didn't have a drug problem, he made the worst mistake of his life, never ever had a parking ticket in his life, comes from a really good family, and is good in himself, we think it would have went differently. If they would have recognized he needed more healing rather than prison, we probably wouldn't be here talking about this today. And so the prosecutor has the power to help transform the system from the very beginning. They're part of this system. And so it's really, really important right now that we understand who's running and what kind of state do we want Hawaii to be. Do we want to, so there's a wave happening right now across the continent and in other countries where the prosecutor or the DAs are part of the transformation and justice reform. And in fact, a lot of public defenders across the continent are now on the other side and are in the prosecutor's office because they understand and they are way more empathetic and they know the economics of what mass incarceration recognizes racial bias. Anyone who says that they don't see racism in our system is not someone anyone should be voting for, because it's all over our system, not only in Hawaii, but across the nation, that we're seeing like why Black Lives Matters have abruptly halted all of us in our shoes. And so yeah, that race is really, really important. And so the partnership that I had with ACLU in co-hosting that forum really wanted to bring light as to who the person was and who would lead that office and what kind of heart and mind do they have. And it's not about, not prosecuting people. It is really about the level of care that is needed within the system. There definitely is a place for prison and jails, but there is not a place for mass incarceration based on racism and bias. And so that's what, knowing who is running for the prosecutor, we should all know before we vote.
Right. I had a question from a viewer. Kathy Chong is asking, are there differences in how Hawaii's parole board and Arizona's parole board function?
Probably, I'm not sure, because the men that are incarcerated, men and women that are sent away, I don't think we have any women right now. They were all brought back. But they still report, they're still a resident of Hawaii. So they're still wards of Hawaii. So they report to the Hawaii Parole Authority and not Arizona's. And so when my son had his parole hearing the other day, it was via Zoom like this. And so,
Okay.
yeah, it's they are still a ward of the state of Hawaii. They are just being housed outside. And what's really interesting, like I shared earlier about the practice of how they treat them with, as far as labor is concerned.
Yeah.
You get 25 cents an hour, maybe 50 cents. Sometimes it depends on what the job is. My son has to pay, all inmates have to pay income taxes on that for Hawaii and for Arizona, because they're in Arizona. That's
Oh, wow.
So by the time they really get their check at the end of the month deposited into their accounts, it's really peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I answered that.
Is ʻEkolu Mea Nui in a position where, if there are other ʻohana who are just beginning a similar journey, are they able to reach out for you for counsel or for guidance? Is that something you folks do?
Yeah, definitely. We could definitely. We are like super slim, like it's this right here. We have like some board. We have a really wide network of people that we can refer to and send them to. So definitely, we have a website, ʻekolumeanui.org, and they can reach me there, or on Facebook and Instagram. I just want to say I'm not the webmaster for any of that. So someone else is, and then I get it. So there's like a little bit of delay sometimes, but not too much.
So on the other side of that, if people want to get involved and help your cause, can they also reach out to you for that?
Definitely, we welcome any help. Yeah. And what we're doing right now in the phase of ʻEkolu Mea Nui is to get our organization Paʻahao, right? So legally 501c3, all that stuff, and then open up and try and look for different grants to get us started up. And then while we're doing that, we are partnering with different organizations and finalizing MOUs with those so that our like I said, our network could be wide. If there's somebody that needs a job and they need training, I have a partnership with Kapililike, and they can go straight to Kapililike and get trained there, etc. So that's what we're doing right now. Is we're forming formal partnerships with those types of like organizations.
Oh wow, that's wonderful. How's ʻEkolu doing?
We talked to him this morning. We hadn't spoken to him.
Oh, nice.
He had his parole hearing. That's usually, and that's not unusual. He usually wants to take time to process and then call us and let us know. So we did talk to him this morning, and he's doing fine. He's so adaptive, and
he always has a good spirit.
Yeah, he brightens up our day. Like, he called me, how are you doing? Because his parole got denied. I mean, I was depressed, and he says, Mom, I'm fine. I'm good, Mom. I'm really good. And we were laughing about something, and then I told him, oh, me and your sister's gonna be on this webinar in the afternoon. He's like, wait, don't air my stuff out there. We were just laughing here. He says, no, it's the same old. So he's like, okay. It's so funny. But he's doing really good. Yeah.
I think it says a lot about your family that you're able to turn a very difficult situation into something positive, not just for you folks, but to also encourage and help others in our Hawaiian community. if you could for a moment, I understand the day he was sentenced was a very hard day for you, but it was also a very wonderful day for your family. Could you share a little bit of that story? I think our Hawaiian community would find inspiration in that.
Yeah. So the day he was sentenced, it was really, like you said, it was very hard. It was a sentence. Usually sentences don't take very long, but it was all day, like 8 hours. And it was just testimony after testimony about the victim that had passed away and their family sharing memories, which is fine. That's why but it's painful because we could feel their pain, and it's just painful for everyone. So it was just heavy, heavy, heavy. And my daughter was there. She was hapai. I think you were overdue, right?
Mhm.
With number 2, and so she originally said, I don't know if I can make it because I might give birth, and I might not be there. Anyway, she made it, and we were there, and we were listening to the what was happening, and then the sentence came, and we were so very sad. I mean, just like just I've never been that sad ever. Second saddest day of my life, actually. And so we went home, and nobody talked. It was just dark and quiet, and nobody spoke. And we just all kind of went to the corners of our house, and they were living with us then. And I just wanted to not ever get up.
Mhm.
And then in the middle of the night, the next morning, actually, she and her left the house and drove to the hospital to give birth. And what we've learned later was that she was actually having contractions the whole time, but wasn't really feeling it because the emotional and the spiritual pain that was occurring just superseded any physical pain that she was going through. Anyway, so she gave birth to a healthy, beautiful joy of our life. And you want to share her name and stuff?
Yeah, so it's Kalei, which is our ʻohana name. And then her name is Grace. And then her middle name is Mea Nui. And the reason for that is because she made us patient.
Yeah.
And Grace too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then my daughter called us like 8 o'clock in the morning, and everybody was at my house. My parents, they live on Hawaii Island, in-laws, everybody was here. And she said, I gave birth. Are you guys going to come? And yeah, we're coming. And I was like, I don't want to go. I just didn't want to. I didn't want nothing to lift up my spirits. I just wanted to stay in that place. And then she called at noon and said, are you guys coming? She's here. And so I said, okay. So my husband said, yeah, we better go. So we get up and we go. And my son had left early in the morning because he didn't have to report to prison until 3 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
And so my son, which the first call, he went. And we walked in, and I don't know if anybody knows the birthing rooms in Castle. They're beautiful. They have like just this like almost 360 view of the ko'olaus. And we walked into her room. It's like a living room, where we walked into her room, and he was standing by the window, and the ko'olaus was behind him, and he was holding her, and the sun rays were peeking through because it was going over the ko'olau by that time. And I just remembered it being it just brought me back to his days of being sheltered by Kaneho'alani and the mamalu that it provides. When he grew up, both of them went to Kulakai Punio Ohala. And it just brought me right back to that place where every morning he would oli to the place there, and calling on the mamalu to care for him and his classmates for the day. And so that stuck in my mind and in my heart, and I always remember and recall that moment. And he was smiling, like nobody was smiling but him. he was smiling and looking at his niece and probably thinking like, I don't know when I'm going to see you again. You might be 10 years old. And so every time she has a birthday, you know, we celebrate him and we celebrate her. And, you know, she knows that because of an instant, it was like this instant when I saw him, like all the heava lifted. And we knew everything would be okay. We didn't know how hard it would be, but we knew it'd be okay. That she was the whole Ailona for us. And so, yeah.
I think we still get Hawaiianas all the time that she's meant for that moment.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that very, very private and personal moment with us. I think it's a testament to the aloha and the mana of not just your ʻohana, but our entire Hawaiian culture, where we can, you know, even in our worst days, we can find beauty and joy somehow. So I thank you for sharing that story. Anything else you want to share about ʻEkolu Mea Nui as an organization? I think we covered everything.
I just wanted to say with that story that that's her birthing story. And we as ʻohana have to continue to give life to you know, the generations that come in their birthing stories. So we tell her her birthing story all the time so that she knows, you know, who she is and why she was birthed. And when she goes out to her kumula'au, recite her birthing story again. I mean, that's a practice that is coming back, of course, but that was normal for us as Kanaka. And so so it taught us that too. Like you said, it made us and know our you know, go back to who we are as a people and lean on that. For ʻEkolu Mea Nui, you know, we're heavy into the advocacy right now because, you know, voting is coming up, and so you'll find those sort of things happening. It's been an honor. We do similar things like this, not that often, but when we do, it's just been an honor to, we grow from it, we learn, we feel your aloha, the people's aloha out there as well. That's what keeps us strong too. And so we just want to mahalo. There's so many people to mahalo. I mean, so many people have been on this journey with us outside of our ʻohana, and we just thank everyone. And I think that's the thing that taught us. That birthing story, Kalei, was the first time that I ever came out and shared. It was a civil beat thing. And it taught us how much support we have. So many people have like been their hearts and their selves to us since then. And so, yeah, and not just to us, but to ʻEkolu Mea Nui. So huge mahalo for that.
Thank you so much for sharing space with us on behalf of Ahakane and Kanaeokana. Mahalo nui. We've been going strong. This is our 13th episode, but this is the first episode where I'm literally chicken skin for the whole hour. Very powerful stories you've shared, and very important stories for our community. So I appreciate you being transparent and being open to our lahui. Is there anything? Again, I mentioned that our audience is aimed towards the kane of our community. Is there anything you'd like to share with our kane in closing?
Yeah, I want to end with this semi-poem that I wrote. If Kanani, you could put it up on the screen. And I just want to share
yes.
Kane and ʻohana. Like this is where this is where we were like 10 years ago and before, and there are folks that are still in this space. And so I just this is our aloha makana to everyone. I am part of a disconnected generation, and I refuse to believe that we can change the world. I realize this may be a shock, but indigenous knowledge and practices in Hawaii's criminal justice system can heal is a lie. Instead, keeping Paʻahao locked up keeps communities safer. I tell you this, once upon a time, Pu'uhonua kept community and people balanced, but this is no longer the truth in my era. This is a quick fix society. Experts tell me 20 years from now, my son will be in and out of prison. I do not concede that I will live in a world of my own making. Mass incarceration will be the norm. No longer can it be said that my peers and I care about humanity. It will be evident that my generation is indifferent and unempathetic. It is foolish to presume that there is hope. So we can simply do nothing and continue to speak and give life to this narrative that Hawaii has created since we adopted this Western carceral system from the mid-1800s. Or we can choose to believe, behave, and be part of the transforming of this legal system with ʻEkolu Mea Nui, where there is faith, love, and
there is hope. It is foolish to presume that my generation is indifferent and unempathetic. It would be evident that my peers and I care about humanity. No longer can it be said that mass incarceration will be the norm. I will live in a world of my own making. I do not concede that. 20 years from now, my brother will still be in prison, in and out of prison. Experts tell me this is a quick fix society. But this is no longer the truth in my era. Pu'uhonua kept community and people balanced once upon a time. I tell you this, keeping Paʻahao locked up keeps communities safer. Is a lie. Instead, indigenous knowledge and practices Hawaii's criminal justice system can heal. I realize this may be shock, but we can change the world, and I refuse to believe that I am part of disconnected generation.
mahalo.
Wow, that was beautiful. Well, Kalei and Jamie, thank you so much for sharing space with us and sharing this a very important subject for our Hawaiian people, and more so how you, again, turned something, a very difficult thing for your family, into a very positive thing for our community. We look forward to hearing more great things coming from ʻEkolu Mea Nui, and we wish you continued success. Thank you so much for joining us. Aloha.
Aloha.
I'm going to close our episode this afternoon by making a couple announcements. Be sure to watch our other programs on Kanaʻo, including Lea Nui Nui, Aloha Rising, Ku Akanaka, ʻAikole, and of course, He Huewai Ola. Also, Ahakane has 2 new shows for our teens and our little ones called Aha Opio and Aha Keiki. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Ahakane and at Kanaʻo. Mahalo nui to our sponsors who make He Huewai Ola possible. Ahakane, Kanaʻo, Hawaii Tourism through the Kukulu Ola program, Papa Ola Lokahi and Consuelo Foundation. During this pandemic, we want you to remember that you are not alone. We do have resources and assistance out there. You just need to reach out, and it's there for you. We have a list of some resources right here on this page. You can pause it if you'd like to check it out, including a resource called Hawaii Job Fairs, for those of you ready to go back to work. Also, yes, as we mentioned in this episode, it is time for voting and census. You can still sign up for the census as well. Voting, very important, and as we mentioned today, especially the race for prosecutor too. So do your research, and your voice does matter. If you have time, please help us improve by taking a short survey. Speaking of Your Voice Matters, we'd love to hear from you. Again, otherwise, tune in every Friday, 2 p.m. on Kanaʻo's Facebook or website. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next Friday at 2 p.m. Mahalo nui and aloha.